All right. So today I'm going to be talking about what happens when the government starts borrowing a whole bunch of money. Because what we've realized over the past year is that some people are just sitting at home and receiving their full salary or part of their salary without doing any work. Now, the question that comes up is where's all this money coming from? And is somebody going to have to pay it back eventually? And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Now, to start this off, I want you to think about Tom's restaurant right here. Tom's Garden Restaurant serves a whole bunch of coffees and wines where people come and enjoy their lunches. He has customers that come every single day. They get served by the waiter in orange, who brings them wine and salads and all that good stuff. And before they leave, all the customers pay. Now, what happens next? Tom collects all the money to supply his business. He has all this money, and he has to pay his waiter. So he gives him some money. The waiter then goes ahead and buys his own food. He also pays his rent, and he pays his taxes. Next step on the business is for Tom to pay his suppliers. So he even has salad and wine to serve his guests. So he gives them money. The suppliers, in turn, they have their own employees who they have to pay. Now, these employees spend their money on food. They might even spend it at Tom's restaurant, on their home, and on their taxes. Unfortunately for Tom, he also has to pay taxes. So he gives money to the government. All this government money gets collected in one big pot so we can afford, police, or we can build new roads, new buildings, and take care of society as it currently stands. Now, some of the money that's left over from Tom, he decides that he wants to open a beer garden to create a new business. And in that new business, he also pays taxes, he pays his waiters, and he pays his suppliers. One of the main things that we have to realize in this case is the money that moves around allows every single person that touches this money to use it to pay for the things that they want, whether that be the waiter or the employee at the supplier, or even Tom himself. All of these people touch this money and they can buy things that they want with it. So the money moves around and thus more people profit from the money. And that's what it works like in an ideal world. Money moves around a lot. A lot of people profit from it, and a lot of people create the opportunity to make more money, similar to Tom, who's creating his own restaurant, which means more money will be moving around. As I said earlier, COVID hit. We're sitting at home. We're not spending our money on restaurants. We're not spending our money on going out. We're not spending our money on activities. The only thing that we spend it on is food and your Netflix subscription. And the money isn't moving around as much. However, we also have access to money. We also get paid because government schemes. But we have to recognize, how does this actually impact us? Where is this money coming from that's paying for my now wonderful quarantine body? Because the money isn't moving around, the government has decided to support people, because otherwise we'll starve or we won't be able to afford life. So they pay for our rent. They pay for the businesses to pay their rent. They pay for the food of the individuals, and they pay for other bills of the entire population, essentially. But does the money ever run out? What happens when, if this keeps going for 6 years, will the government be able to afford it? And unfortunately, governments are prepared for these scenarios. One of the ways that they raise more money without changing anything significantly is by creating government bonds. A government bond is a different investment vehicle similar to a stock, as we usually talk about. A bond, however, is basically a share of the government. However, you will never receive anything to say for the government, but you receive a ticket that says you bought a bond for 10,000 bucks, and you will have that bond for 5 years or 10 years or a different set amount of time. At the end of that time, you get the exact money back that you gave for the bond, but you also receive interest. So essentially, you're buying government debt. Now, us as investors, we have learned over the past few months that we shouldn't just buy one single thing. So the investors in the world right now have been buying bonds because they're at great prices and governments need their help, but they're only going to buy so many bonds. So what happens when there's no more investors to buy bonds? Does the government run out of money? Well, fortunately, they don't. They go to another government body, which is called the central bank, the people that actually put money into the environment, into the market that you're looking at right now. And how does that work? The central bank has access to money, which it can give out, and which it's doing right now. It's paying for people, it's paying for businesses, and it's paying for the entire world to keep running, essentially. But will the central bank ever run out? Fortunately, that will never be the case. And this is a very complicated process that we don't really want to get into with too much detail because there's a lot of things to consider. However, the central bank can create pretty much money out of thin air. Now that it's digital, they just say, you know what, we need more money. So we're going to put more money into the market. We're going to make more money available for our people so we can pay the existing expenses of everybody, but we can also pay life. We can pay that things keep going as they currently are. So we don't really have a deficit of money coming in. The central bank will just put more money into the environment, essentially. Now, if you're a business owner and you're selling apples for $1, and you know that there's so much money out there, you might say, you know what? There's so much free money that's just being handed out for free. I'm going to bump up the cost of my apple to $2 instead of $1. Now, my competitor, he sees me doing this and he says, you know what? Chris is selling his apples for $2. I'm going to sell mine for $3, where I usually sell them for $2. So essentially, the cost rises. And if you want to figure out how cost structures move, look at Luke's video about the stock prices and how they fluctuate. However, this is a very similar example. Prices get bumped up because people want more money and there's more money available. So all this money that the government has put into the markets isn't really worth that much. The common term for this is inflation. Prices get inflated, prices get larger, even though the product isn't worth more. This picture is from after the Second World War, where hyperinflation happened, where you had to come in with a wheelbarrow to pay for a single loaf of bread. And this isn't something that we make up, but it's something that we're moving towards because so much money is being put into the hands of people around. What will happen when all this money starts moving again and prices rise? Now, governments are prepared for these scenarios. They know what will happen. They know how to make sure that we don't have hyperinflation or situations like these coming up. But what's scary right now, and a lot of people are talking about, is we have the coronavirus and the government is paying a whole bunch of money. But what happens when, as we have been talking about for the past few months, the bubble pops? An entire new crisis unrelated to COVID hits the markets. Will the government still be able to put in so much money to supply everyone? And it's not something that we can answer right now, but it's just something that we really have to be aware of going forward, that we are in a very, very dangerous situation at the moment. Does anyone have any questions?